Welcome back, everyone. Now, the purpose of this video is to familiarize you with the resources and documents and materials that are available, which are going to support your writing of the rhetorical response essay. And that, in general, is going to be our focus for the next week or so. So the first thing that I want to point out is that even though we haven't been looking at rhetorical analysis or rhetorical response as a genre, we have been practicing rhetorical analysis for the past week or so up until we left for break. So if you scroll down in Canvas past week 9 and revised materials, you'll find a module labeled Materials to Review from Before Break. And you have here some materials that will provide you with a bit of a review if you need it. So you have the rhetorical situation video that you were to watch. You have the sample George Foreman text that we analyzed as a class. You have the video that we analyzed as a class on tuition dollars and the discussion questions which prompted rhetorical analysis. And finally, you have the assignment that we did I want to say in the 7th or 8th week, which asked you to identify and understand an audience. So this is a great resource if you are trying to figure out who your intended audience is for the article that you are analyzing. And finally, up here, you have the 3 articles that that you have a choice of analyzing for this assignment. So Matlin, Enzaldua, or Burwell. Now, for the most part, that is really all you're going to need in order to complete the second part of the discussion post by Sunday at midnight, because it's really just asking you specific questions about the article that you're going to analyze. However, if you want to start looking ahead and thinking about how you're going to transfer those ideas to an actual essay, the materials listed in the most recent module under week 9 are going to be really helpful for you. And these are the materials that I would like to take you through today. But before I do that, I'd like to contextualize all of this briefly by drawing a connection to the work that you are turning in for Sunday and the work that you will be turning in by Wednesday at midnight. So just as a reminder, this is the homework prompt that is due by Sunday at midnight. It's posted under week 9 in modules, and it's also posted to the calendar. Now, I'm not going to read through all of this because it is available in multiple places. However, I am going to draw your attention to the 2 discussion posts, which are due by Sunday at midnight. So I scroll down here. You have discussion post 1, which is really just a check-in post to kind of see how you're doing and how you're handling this transition. It really is just to give me a sense of where you are and what the last week or so has been like for you. The second one is a little bit more back to business. So you have a prompt that just asks you to relay information about the changes in the course structure. This just gives me the sense that you have actually had some time to review these changes. The second part here, which is probably the most important as it connects most directly to the assignment, is the rhetorical analysis brainstorm, which functions in a lot of ways as an outline for your essay. So the information and the questions that are being asked of you here are pieces of information that you are going to include in your essay. I do have you identifying 3 different choices here, whereas in your essay you will only identify 2 because you are going to have two body paragraphs versus 3. But I wanted to give you the opportunity to get as many ideas as you can down. So in essence, this discussion post functions as an outline. When we move to Wednesday and what is due on Wednesday, we're going to be taking that information and transferring that over into an actual essay. So you have a reading for Wednesday, you have a video that I want you to watch on online peer review, and then you are going to be asked to submit a partial draft of your rhetorical analysis for peer review. Now, the final draft of your essay will be 3 paragraphs and will include an introduction and 2 body paragraphs. Much like your A2, the focus here is on developing a really sound paragraph structure, which is why we're only focusing on 3 paragraphs. For Wednesday, you will only submit 2 paragraphs, an introductory paragraph and 1 body paragraph. So now what I'd like to do is take us back to the materials that are going to guide you as you are making that transfer and as you're developing the ideas that you are going to include in those 3 paragraphs. So you have here several different resources that are going to be really, really valuable to you. You have a document that takes you through the body paragraph development of the essay. You have a document that talks exclusively about the introduction, and then you have a document that kind of covers both. So this guide to writing a rhetorical response paper is really going to function as an outline of the entire piece. Whereas these 2 focus more exclusively on the paragraphs at hand. And then you also have a strong example of a body paragraph. Now let's start with your introductory paragraph, which you're going to notice is very similar to the introductory paragraph that you wrote for your response essay. And this is because there are certain genre features that carry across different kinds of academic writing. So a rhetorical response has certain similarities to a personal response or reflective response essay. So you are going to start with your hook, which should be used to draw your reader in and get them interested in this topic, in this article that you are analyzing. You have several different options which you can use in order to do this. And then once you have established that interest from your audience, you want to make sure that you are clearly introducing the article. And this is something that I saw some of you forgetting to do when you in your A2s. So really making sure you have the title in quotation marks, the author's first and last name, the date, and the place of publication in italics. You also want to include a 4 to 5 sentence summary using author tags, so identifying a couple of really important ideas in addition to the thesis. One of the things that I noticed in A2 is that students were oftentimes, they would identify the thesis and then they would kind of move on. Don't be afraid to allow your introduction to be longer. You have a lot of information that you need to cover here, but if your reader doesn't have a sense of what is happening in the article, then they're not really going to be able to follow your rhetorical analysis. So offering a few sentences for your summary is really going to give them that context and that groundwork. The other thing that you want to make sure that you identify in your introduction, which is different for your rhetorical analysis or rhetorical response, is the text purpose, the text's intended audience, and how you know the audience is who you say they are, right? So a resource that would be really helpful in order to do that would be the identifying and understanding audience assignment that we did a few weeks back. So if you're having a hard time figuring out who is this intended audience, who is the author most trying to reach, I would recommend looking at that document in modules. So this is a lot of information, Don't be afraid, once again, to really let your introduction go a little bit longer in order to cover all of this. Because once you do all of this, you are going to finally, this sets you up really nicely to identify your thesis. So in your thesis, you are basically letting your reader know whether or not you felt the author was effective based on the choices they made and who their intended audience is. So an example of a thesis statement might be, Urban was incredibly effective in reaching his intended audience through the use of humor and the use of visuals. So not only have I stated my thesis, my main argument here, I've also identified the two features that I am going to analyze. And these are the features that you will be analyzing in the body paragraphs. Finally, we'll talk about what you're doing in the body paragraph. And you'll notice that this is very similar to the structure of a reflective response essay in that it follows that triac structure. So in these body paragraphs, and you will have two of them, you are going to analyze one textual feature. And I can tell you that the more specific you are in choosing that textual feature, the easier this is going to be, right? So rather than saying, I'm analyzing the author's tone, right? You might say, I'm analyzing the author's humorous tone, right? And then suddenly you're then able to kind of find those specific examples and speak to them more, more specifically in your writing. So choosing one textual feature, some quality of the text, you're going to provide an example of it and then talk about why it's effective, right? So that is the purpose of the paragraph. So you'll see that this does really follow a similar triac structure. You have a topic sentence where you are identifying that textual feature. You might explain, you might give some context to kind of show how it's being used or why it's important. At the same time, providing an example from the text and remembering those quote sandwiches, right? So if you need to contextualize your quote, you're making sure that you're providing that context, and then potentially a follow-up sentence. So that takes us through R and E, and then after you've provided that evidence, you're providing an analysis, right? So rather than talking about your own response, now you're talking about the impact that this textual feature, humor, use of visuals, the kind of evidence used, those kinds of things, again, those are textual features, the impact that that has potentially on the audience. And you want to answer the following questions. How does this textual feature make the readers feel? What will this make the readers think about the author? And how does this help or hurt the way the writer achieves his or her purpose, right? And then you would have that kind of concluding sentence, which ties it back to your thesis, which once again talks about how effective or ineffective this author was in achieving their purpose. Both this outline and the document, which provides a more robust outline of the entire essay, provides you with sentence starters. So as a reminder, you have these in both documents, and you also have these in your textbook. So if you're having a hard time figuring out how to put all of these ideas together, these frameworks can be really helpful with that. Now, just as a reminder, I just took you through the writing and introduction and the rhetorical response paragraph development document. This document here, I'm not going to take you through because it is very, very similar to both. It just kind of outlines the entire thing for you. Lastly, I want to call your attention to the strong body paragraph, only because you'll notice that not only do I have a strong example for you, I've also broken down this example so that you can kind of see how it fits into that triac structure. So these are the resources available to you, and these are the resources that I encourage you to use as you move forward with your writing.